think all of us who watched House of the Dragon have opinions about certain changes that the writers and Ryan Condal have made. And I have already spoken about how I feel about the erasure of Nettles and giving her storyline to Rhaena instead of trying to build upon Rhaena. But I want to speak about another change that I feel was generally accepted when the episode first premiered, but was slowly soured as time passed and people began to really think about the implications of it. And I'm sure you can guess from the title of this video that the change I mean is Laenor faking his death with the help of Daemon and Rhaenyra, which allowed Laenor to run away with his love of Quarrel. Now, for those of you who don't know because you didn't read Fire and Blood or had things spoiled for you, in the books, Laenor was murdered by his lover and sparring partner Quarrel Corey during what is supposed to be an argument. Some accounts suggested it was a lovers' quarrel, while others hint that it was a plot orchestrated by Daemon so that he could marry Rhaenyra without issue. However, because Fire and Blood is a historical account based on unreliable narrators, and I know how people hate hearing that by this point, the true circumstances surrounding Laenor's death remain uncertain. So why was this change made? There's basically 3 reasons for this. Number 1, to avoid the bury your gay tropes. Laenor is gay. And I think that's very, very obvious. To make a long and nuanced explanation short, the bury your gays trope is a trope in media where LGBT characters are viewed as more expendable than their heterosexual counterparts, and are usually killed off because they are gay. And for those of you who don't know, when Game of Thrones was airing, not only was the show known for killing any and all characters, well, until they stopped doing that in season 6, and then restarted in the finale. The show was also known for having a pattern of killing queer characters and treating them like the butt of the joke since its first episode. So naturally, people had opinions about this, feeling that this was a ritualistic purging in order to reinforce the heterosexual hierarchy. And we see this in the deaths of Larys, who was killed after he was forced to renounce his sexual orientation and admit to all that he was a sinner. And we see this in the fates of Renly Baratheon, Ellaria Sand, Oberyn Martell, and Yara Gravejoy. They are practically defined by their sexual orientation and then die young, well, except for Yara. House of the Dragon wanted to avoid this same pitfall, and I assume that's because Laenor is no longer important after his death, except as proof that his 3 eldest sons are not Velaryons. So the show decided to let Laenor live. And also, despite having a scene where Laenor's previous lover, Joffrey, is beaten to death by Crispin Cole, which is arguably a worse death than the one he received in the book, but I digress. The second reason Laenor is allowed to live is to maintain Rhaenyra's morality. Regardless of how you feel about her, I don't think anyone can justifiably deny that Rhaenyra is the main character of House of the Dragon. And the writers clearly did not want their main character to be morally bankrupt, especially in comparison to how Rhaenyra is written in Fire and Blood. So possibly ordering the murder of your husband alongside your uncle so that you could marry said uncle would make that main character look too evil and morally compromised, and harder to root for. This is despite the fact that we've seen characters in this franchise do worse, and we still love them for it. Faking Laenor's death removes Laenor from the picture, allowing Rhaenyra to gain Daemon for a husband, and for Rhaenyra and Daemon to retain their sympathetic and moral superiority by not resorting to kinslaying and matricide. The third and final reason is that it subverts expectations. Like I said before, for those of us who read the book, or had the story spoiled for them, we knew Laenor's fate. His death is supposed to be inevitable, and we were just waiting for it to happen. Letting Laenor live surprises everyone, even those who knew his death was coming. We all thought that when Rhaenyra and Daemon were speaking to each other, and when we're seeing the fight between Laenor and Quarrel, that Laenor was going to die. Even when Daemon killed that one servant, R.I.P. that guy. You didn't deserve that. Most of us still thought that Laenor was going to die, so seeing Laenor get into that rowboat with Quarrel took us all by surprise. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let me tell you why letting Laenor Velaryon live was a bad decision. To start with the most obvious, it creates the sea smoke rider problem. In universe, it is assumed and wildly accepted that dragons only take a new rider when their previous one dies. So if Laenor is still alive, then Adam of Hull should not be able to claim sea smoke in Season 2. Now this could be explained with a few possibilities. Like maybe Laenor dies off screen, or maybe because Laenor was gone for years, it weakened his and Sea Smoke's bond, or even that the show is creating its own rules for how dragon bonds work, allowing a dragon to have multiple riders at once. But if any of these are the case, then it would have just been easier to kill Laenor when he was supposed to die. and it creates significant lore inconsistencies that, let's be real, are probably never going to be fixed or answered. The next problem that this creates is an unnecessary fallout with House Velaryon. This deception that Laenor, Rhaenyra, and Daemon created hurts the strongest allies that Rhaenyra has, House Velaryon. Corlys and Rhaenys were made to think that their son and only remaining child had been murdered, and the only thing that Rhaenyra and Daemon did to improve things was having Baela foster a Driftmark. Which in and of itself is dumb because Lucerys is the one who's supposed to be inheriting Driftmark, and he's only been to Driftmark, once that we see in the show? Why is he not being fostered? Why is he not being taught how to be the Lord of Driftmark? That just seems kind of like a wasted opportunity. I mean, you have so many children. You could send Luke too with Baela. What is the harm there? I don't think anyone is going to straight up murder Luke there. Otherwise, all of House Velaryon is going to be under a microphone, a magnifying glass to see who did it. And speaking of Lucerys, it's this belief that Rhaenyra and Daemon had killed her son that kept Rhaenys from supporting Lucerys over the succession of Driftmark. Granted, Rhaenys had already wanted Baela and Rhaena to have Driftmark, but still, the fact that Rhaenyra expected Rhaenys' support after making this woman think she murdered her son, and probably after not having spoken to each other in a long time, is kind of crazy. Not to mention, Laenor being alive means that there's no reason for the battle over the Driftmark succession to even happen. Think about it. If Laenor doesn't fake his death and run off with Corlys, he stays with Rhaenyra. What ground would Vaemond have to stand on when Corlys is on his thought-to-be deathbed? Jace, Luke, and Joff have a dubious parentage across Westeros.
Our children are bastards!
But Laenor certainly doesn't. Vaemond would be seen outright as a power-hungry and grasping man if he tried to take Driftmark from Laenor. What ground would the Greens really have to stand on to take the land from Laenor? And Rhaenys certainly wouldn't allow them to do that. Hell, I'm sure the other Velaryons on Driftmark wouldn't allow Vaemond to do that. And that just makes Rhaenyra and Laenor look even stupider. The next problem is obvious, the risk of the truth coming out. So long as Laenor is alive, and so long as there are people, Rhaenyra, Daemon, and Corlys, who know that he's alive, there will always be the risk of others discovering the truth, and that would destroy any chance Rhaenyra has of taking the throne. Her credibility and moral standing would be forever destroyed. How would her allies be able to trust her after finding out that she faked her husband's death just so she could marry her very unpopular uncle? And you could argue that doing this would have been seen as treason. I mean, most likely Viserys would not have punished her for it, but still. This also leads to another problem, and it pertains to her youngest sons, Aegon III and Viserys II. Rhaenyra and Daemon married because Laenor was dead. If he's alive, then he would still be married to Rhaenyra. Even though Valyrian culture accepts and practices polygamy, or in this case polyandry, Westerosi culture does not. Just look at what happened to Maegor, and since then no Targaryen has tried to have more than one spouse at a time. So does that mean in the eyes of Westeros, especially its more religiously inclined, that Aegon and Viserys are bastards in the show? Would Daemon and Rhaenyra's marriage even still be legally valid? These are the questions that would have to be brought up if Laenor is ever discovered to be alive. The final problem that I believe comes from orchestrating Laenor's death is that making everyone think they killed Laenor, Rhaenyra and Daemon's desire to be feared backfired. Being feared will not make people want to join the Black's cause. I mean, why would people trust you if they think you're capable of murdering your own cousin/husband? If I were Aegon, Helaena, Aemond, or Daeron, I would not trust my older sister not to kill me if she could so easily kill her husband and the supposed father of her children. This should be political suicide. This along with hiding away on Dragonstone for 6 years while the Greens ruled the realm due to Viserys slowly dying. Which just adds to the belief that people may have that Rhaenyra is not suitable for the throne. So is faking Laenor's death worth it? You could argue that it was in the very short term, but overall, no. It just creates dangerous loose ends and future problems. And honestly, it's just another thing on a long list of things about this show that bothers me. Especially because, like I said before, they will probably never address this again. Or at least address it in an interesting or intelligent way. But let me know what you think. Was faking Laenor's death a smart move, or was it a terrible one? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more A Song of Ice and Fire and House of the Dragon breakdowns.